Hey, what's going on, everyone? My name is Matt Jarbo. This is Stranger Days, and man, ooh, Hollywood. You guys like to invite scandal in a lot of things. You guys like to invite a lot of stuff to go down that may bite you in the ass later on. And I personally feel that this particular bit of scandal would be well deserved if it happens. Simply because the shoe is going to be on the other foot in terms of the culture war and manufactured outrage and left versus right. I guess I don't know. It all centers around Lena Dunham, which is always fun to talk about because she's always a walking disaster in many different fronts. But before we jump into that, toss this video a thumbs up. Let me know you guys are here, you guys are watching, and you're engaged. Helps out a lot. Now, Lena Dunham has had a very interesting career in the last couple of years, right? Like she had Girls come out in 2010, which was joked about being a very affluent show about a bunch of rich, connected daughters of very powerful men, doing a show about trying to be millennials living in Brooklyn way back in the day. And it got criticized heavily for that. And even Lena's own autobiography, where she talks about masturbating with her sister in the bed next to her and all the other crazy stuff with that, has really kind of been odd to look at. And I always invite people for a better understanding of that particular situation to go and look up her father, Carol Dunham's artwork. You will look at the artwork and you'll be like, oh, I can maybe see why Lena's a little bit on the side. But anyway, Lena's been hired to adapt a story. She's been hired as a writer. Keep in mind, this is coming about a week and a half after her website, Lenny, went down, the magazine she was holding for a while. She's been hired to adapt a story from Steven Spielberg and JJ Abrams, which is so weird to me because I don't know if they realize that what exactly is going to be coming down the pipeline. So it says Lena Dunham tapped by Steven Spielberg and JJ Abrams to adapt Syrian Refugee story. The Girl's creator will adapt a non-fiction book, A Hope More Powerful Than the Sea by Melissa Fleming. So Lena Dunham, an affluent white woman, very fluent, not of her own, and she's made her money in her own right, so I'll give her credit there. And she wrote and directed a lot of episodes of Girls. And I'm not going to lie, they were actually, some of those are pretty well written that I saw. But then again, she's mostly known for Adam Driver ejaculating on a woman's chest in the show, right? And her self-deprecations and everything else, is being tasked to write a story about a Syrian girl who was a refugee escaping a very bad place. Does that seem a little bit odd to anybody else? It seemed a little bit kind of weird to anybody else. So it says here, Lena Dunham has been tapped to adapt a Syrian refugee story for the big screen for co-producers Steven Spielberg and JJ Abrams. Dunham will write an adaptation of the non-fiction story, A Hope More Powerful Than the Sea, one refugee's incredible story of loss, love, and survival. The book, here's the thing here. So the book was originally released in 2017, documents the journey of a young Syrian woman, Doaa Al-Zamel, and her rescue from the Mediterranean as one of the few survivors of a capsized boat of refugees. So, so the woman who wrote the story here, works with the United Nations High Commissions for Refugees, travels to war zones, met this girl, this teenager at the time, Doaa Al-Zamel, which, by the way, this is what she looks like. And this is the story, her story of being capsized at sea in the Mediterranean, surviving and being rescued, is going to be adapted for a story by Lena Dunham. They always say, write what you know, right? They say that you always see that, write what you know, write what you know. But here is not something that Lena Dunham would know. Here is not something that Lena Dunham would know at all, right? I can just imagine that conversation. Like sitting down with Spielberg and JJ Abrams, like, so Lena, we really want to adapt the story of Doaa Al-Zamel and being rescued from, being capsized in the Mediterranean. It's a great piece. It's a great piece. She's like, oh yeah, no, I've read it. And I've got friends who are refugees. So I know their struggle. I know their plight. I mean, their family left, and lives in Brooklyn and Williamsburg, but they're totally know what it's like. They've never lived in those countries, but they totally get it. And they've told me all about the homeland and how bad it is. I mean, we talked about it at Starbucks down there in the center of Williamsburg. I mean, it was an eclectic Starbucks. You have to have been there. It's all weird. It's very organic, very vegan, not your typical Starbucks, but it works. Can Doaa be set in this? Can we open with her writing her own story from a Starbucks in Williamsburg? We shot an episode of Girls at this great little bistro. Like we can make it look like a Starbucks if that's not available. Like that's the kind of mindset she's gonna have going into this, right? Like Lena doesn't have her own experiences that I think would put her in the right mindset to write this story. I've written screenplays, I've written movies, I've written a ton of stuff, and I would never even bother to write a story like this. If they asked me, hey, Matt, you want to adapt this story? I'd be like, no. Because like I wouldn't even know where to begin. I wouldn't even know where to begin telling this kind of story, right? Like, because you still want to have an understanding of the culture and maybe why she left in a history of the whole. It's a biopic essentially, right? It's a biopic. So having a knowledge of the history at the time of why this girl tried to leave, why she was running, why she was fleeing Syria, what happened to push her on that boat, what got her there. I mean, the climax of the story is going to be like, not even the climax. The climax of the story is going to be the rescue, but it's going to have the first act, and then they're going to like crash the boat, and then they're going to be hanging out on it, and that's going to be most of the movie. Right. And then they're going to get rescued. And then that's going to be this inspirational thing. She's going to be the hero. And that's fine. That's fine. I'm not knocking the story at all. What I'm saying here, though, is I don't think Lena Dunham personally could tell this story. Right. Like, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see at any point in time she's going to be able to fit in a segment in this story where Doaa here, puts rocks in her sister's vajayjay, or masturbates next to her, or writes stories about how she has compulsive OCD touching herself to the point of bleeding, as her character did in Girls. I don't think that Doaa is going to want to walk around topless the whole time, making commentary about how her body looks because she's so hungry from being a Syrian refugee. I don't think there's going to be all of these very vapid, self-absorbed, self-obsessed millennial takings on this particular story that Lena is going to be able to aid to the particular subject matter here. I mean, Lena Dunham writing a story about this, it would be like hiring me to write the origins of Black Lives Matter. It just would be like, why? Like, and here's the thing, when I talked about earlier about like the salt will flow from this, because you have an affluent white woman telling the story of a Syrian refugee, of a 17-year-old female Syrian refugee. And you're gonna find people in Hollywood like, well, what, you couldn't find a Syrian or a person of Middle Eastern descent to write this story? Like, there's not a lot of unpaid writers in Hollywood. There are a ton of unpaid writers in Hollywood. I know I was one for a few years. And you tell me not to be able to find that? Right? Like if you want to find someone that could write that from like their perspective, that could understand it and tell the story that's better. This isn't adapting a fictional tale. This is adapting a real life event, having understanding of the politics of the region, the history of the region, why things happen, and getting the right the right tone of it for the script. Yeah, you want that. You don't want to be like Mark Bowl, who spent time within was it an IED, and was it explosives ordnance EOD unit in the military during the Iraq War, came home and wrote what was it, the Hurt Locker, and got that made into a movie. Everyone's like, oh, it's so realistic. No, it wasn't realistic at all. There's no way a 3-man EOD unit would engage in sniper fire with the enemy or leave the base or do all the stupid shit that happened in that movie. But it was hailed as realistic because people don't know. That was 2009. We're way past that now. This is going to end up being a big deal. Lena Dunham is not the right person for the job. I'm just telling you this to save your ass some time. Because she can only play the victim so long when it comes to criticizing her own content that she puts out there. Now she's going to be trying to tell the life story of somebody else who she's never even remotely, not once, not ever set foot into. I love Spielberg and I love JJ Abrams, but you all are putting yourself in a real awkward situation. Anyway, the story sounds interesting. If it ever comes to screen or whatever, I'll check it out. I hope she doesn't write it. I do hope they give it to someone who has a better understanding of it. I just feel this is going to be bad. This is going to blow up in their face. I think this is what's going to happen. Anyway, if you guys made it this far, type Lena in the chat so I know. And be sure to leave your comments, thumbs up the video, subscribe to the channel if you're new and you want to see more content like this. If you want to help the channel, you can always check out Patreon or channel memberships, links below. And I'll talk to you guys later. Have yourself a fantastic day, and peace out.